All right, so today we're going deep on Isahit and how they're working in Africa's digital labor market. Specifically, looking at Cameroon.
Okay.
We're going to see if their ethical payment claims actually hold up, especially for women,
Right.
and we'll compare that with what's being reported about wages for AI training data work all across Africa.
Yeah, makes sense.
We'll also factor in Cameroon's minimum wage in all of this.
For sure.
Oh, and hey, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to help Le Podcast de Philippe hit that 1,000 subscriber mark today.
Awesome.
So Isahit's been around since 2017, offering online work in French-speaking Africa.
Yeah, they're branding themselves as this ethical platform for data annotation work,
Interesting.
saying they pay $20 a day for 7 hours of work.
Oh.
Which they're quick to point out is a lot better than what you hear about on some other platforms known for, those really low wages.
Yeah, I've heard those stories.
It's a problem.
So what exactly does Isahit do? What kind of services do they offer?
Well, they do a bunch of things like refining AI models, natural language processing, and computer vision tasks like image and video labeling.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty wide range of industries they cater to.
So this is all happening within the gig economy and digital labor sector in Africa, right?
Exactly, and it's growing fast.
I bet.
There was this interesting study done between Paris and Antananarivo.
Where's that?
It's in Madagascar.
Okay.
And it showed how much French AI companies rely on data workers in former French colonies.
Wow, so they're going back to the same places.
Seems like it.
What did they find out?
Well, the wages were really low, like 96 to 126 euros a month in Madagascar.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's barely anything.
Yeah, and often the conditions were pretty bad, too.
So Isahit's operating in places like Cameroon, Togo, and Burkina Faso, right?
Yep. And the people there are doing tasks like content moderation and data entry.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, and it's not always easy.
No, I can imagine.
But, we actually have a story from someone who's worked with Isahit in Cameroon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Her name is Tatiana Manguila.
What's her story?
Well, she joined Isahit to help pay for her education, and now she's a HITER manager.
That's great. Did she like working there?
It sounds like it. Yeah. She talked about how it boosted her confidence, and she learned all sorts of new skills, like using different software and managing teams.
Huh, that's impressive.
She even mentioned a cool project. She worked on an orange commercial.
I bet she felt proud.
Yeah, she really seemed to. And now she's encouraging other women to join Isahit for their own personal and professional growth.
That's a really positive story.
It is, but we also need to talk about the bigger picture. The ethical concerns surrounding the whole AI training data industry in Africa.
Yeah, that's important.
There was this investigation by Time magazine that found some pretty disturbing stuff.
Like what?
Well, they found workers in Kenya who were being paid less than €3 an hour to filter out really harmful content for AI models like ChatGPT.
Wow, that's terrible.
It is, and it makes you question how consistent pay standards really are across the continent. Absolutely. So these African data annotators, they're playing a huge role in labeling data for all sorts of AI applications.
Right, yeah. From self-driving cars to even medical diagnoses.
So their work is super important.
Incredibly important.
But it sounds like the conditions they're working in don't reflect that.
You're right. It's like a huge disconnect between the value of their work and how they're being treated.
Yeah. So what are they dealing with?
Low pay for one thing, and it's not always consistent either.
Ugh, that's rough.
Plus, they often have to work really long hours, like up to 13 hours a day sometimes.
No way, that's insane.
And the content they have to sift through can be really disturbing,
Yeah, I can imagine.
But they don't always get the support they need to deal with that kind of stuff.
So there's no psychological support?
Not always, and there's often a lack of legal protection, too.
That's awful. So they're just kind of left to fend for themselves.
It seems that way in a lot of cases.
But it sounds like people are starting to push back.
Yeah, definitely. In Kenya, for example, the data annotators are getting organized.
That's awesome.
They're demanding fair wages and better working conditions, even presented a petition to their parliament.
Good for them. So they're not taking this lying down.
Not at all. They're making their voices heard.
So back to Isahit, they're saying they pay $20 a day for 7 hours in French-speaking Africa.
Right.
But then we hear about people doing similar work elsewhere for less than €3 an hour.
Yeah, it definitely raises some eyebrows.
So what's the story?
Well, to really get a sense of what's going on in Cameroon, we got to look at the minimum wage there.
Okay, so what is it?
As of April 2025, it's 43,969 FCFA per month, and that kicked in back in February 2024.
All right, so that's the baseline.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Cameroonian labor law doesn't have a ton of specific rules about minimum wage.
Oh, really? So how does it work?
Well, mostly it comes down to the 1992 Labor Code.
Ah, okay, so that's where it all stems from.
Exactly, and they have this thing called the Guaranteed Interprofessional Minimum Wage, or SMIG.
Right, I've heard of that.
The government sets that after talking to the National Advisory Labor Commission.
Makes sense. So it's not just some arbitrary number.
No, they take different factors into account.
And what about different industries?
Well, a lot of times, specific sectors will have their wages figured out through collective agreements.
So there's some flexibility there.
Yeah, depends on the industry.
So what happens if an employer in Cameroon doesn't pay the minimum wage?
Oh, they can get hit with some pretty hefty penalties.
Like what?
Anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million francs.
Whoa. Okay, they're not messing around.
Not at all. There are laws in place to protect workers.
So does Isahit's $20 daily rate measure up? Are they actually playing by the rules?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, more like the 43,969 FCFA question, I guess.
Yeah.
But seriously, it's hard to say for sure.
You got that right.
It's tricky comparing a daily rate to a monthly minimum wage.
Exactly. We need more information.
Like what?
How many days of work does Isahit actually offer each month?
That's key.
If we say it's a typical 5-day work week, then $20 a day could actually be higher than the monthly minimum wage.
But we don't know that for sure, do we?
Nope. And we also don't know how much their hiders are actually making on average each month.
So is it possible that the daily rate looks good, but they're not getting enough work to make a decent living?
It's totally possible. That's the big question mark here.
So Isahit might be paying more than some other companies in Africa, but we can't say for certain if they're truly paying women a fair wage in Cameroon.
Not without knowing more about how often they offer work and what the average monthly earnings are compared to the local minimum wage and, the cost of living.
It's not just about the numbers on paper.
Right. The reality on the ground could be very different.
So this whole deep dive has really shown how complicated it is to figure out if digital labor practices in Africa are actually ethical.
Yeah, there are so many layers.
On one hand, you have Isahit saying they're doing things the right way, and their pay seems better than what we hear about in some other places.
But then there are all these reports of people being exploited and paid really low wages for this kind of work all over Africa.
It's a mess.
It really is. And it shows that we need a lot more transparency from companies like Isahit about what people are actually earning and what their working conditions are really like.
Yeah, they need to be held accountable.
Absolutely. And this whole situation brings up a really important question for everyone listening.
What's that?
African workers are playing a crucial role in the global AI industry, but are they being treated fairly?
It doesn't sound like it.
So what responsibility do companies and even consumers have to make sure these people are getting a fair wage and working in decent conditions?
That's a big question.
It is, and it's one we all need to think about because there's a big difference between what a company says it's doing and what's actually happening to the people doing the work.
It's easy to talk the talk, but walking the walk is a whole other story.
Exactly, and we need to hold these companies accountable and make sure they're actually living up to their ethical promises.
It's about more than just profits. It's about people's lives.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been eye-opening, to say the least.
It's been a pleasure.
And for everyone listening, keep asking those tough questions and demand better for the people behind the technology we all use.
We can make a difference.
Absolutely. All right, until next time.
See you then.